people will ask me what is the very best steak to buy, and I suggest that they buy a porterhouse USDA prime, because with a porterhouse actually there's two steaks in one. If you were to cut out the small round section, the tenderloin, you'd have a filet mignon. Then this larger loin eye portion, if you cut that away from the bone, it would be a loin strip steak. Some places call it a New York strip steak or a Kansas City strip steak. Then another steak that's certainly nice for family meals or when you're entertaining, because it's a nice large size steak, is this one, a flat bone sirloin. And this long flat bone, this is the most tender of all your sirloin steaks. You'll notice that this is cut thick, a good 1.5 inches thick. And I'd like to suggest that in buying steaks, any steak that you buy, if you'll have it cut at least 1 inch in thickness, you'll get much better results in cooking. And of course, with this steak being USDA choice, a high quality grade, it can be broiled or pan broiled. So we'll just put it on the broiler pan, ready to go in the broiler. And whenever you're handling meat or handling steaks, be sure to use tongs so that you don't puncture the meat. Because in using tongs to handle the meat, treat it with tender, loving care. Now another steak that's delicious for broiling or for cooking outdoors is a beef ribeye steak. This has a well-developed flavor. Also, you'll notice that this is cut about 1.5 inches thick. These are nice boneless steaks for broiling, or as I said, for cooking out of doors. Now for economy, you might like to try a blade chuck steak, such as this one. This is good for broiling or cooking on the outdoor grill if it's prime or choice. Or another economical cut is this full cut round steak. And the round steak has several different sections, all of which can be prepared in different ways. And you can select in prime or choice. Now here's a booklet entitled How to Buy Beef Steaks, which illustrates for you all of the popular retail cuts as you see them in the meat counter, all the popular steaks, some of the ones I've been talking about, others included. You can request a single free copy of the booklet by writing to Agriculture TV, Washington, D.C., zip code 20250. Now, if you select wisely and prepare your steaks properly, you'll be assured of delectable, sizzling steaks, just like this one in the broiler. If you've considered buying meat in quantity to stock your home freezer, you might have had a few questions along the way. And there are basic considerations to make in buying for a freezer. For example, the amount of freezer space that you have available, then the amount of meat that your family can use within a reasonable period of time, the type of meat cuts and quality of meat that your family prefers, and also the amount of money that you can spend all at one time. Now, in addition to these basic considerations, there are several different ways to buy, or alternatives in buying. You can buy in carcass form, like a whole side of beef, and a good rule of thumb to follow here is that if you buy an entire side like this, you'll get 25% steaks, 25% roast, 25% stewing beef and grinding beef, and 25% waste, bone and fat. So there's all of that to take into account. Then if you'd like to buy just a hind quarter, this section of the side of beef, you'll get some of the more tender cuts like porterhouse steak and sirloin steak, but this will cost about 15 to 20 cents per pound more than this portion, the forequarter. Now the forequarter has the delectable rib roast, but it also has some of the less tender cuts like the chuck, which takes up about 50% of the forequarter. So there are all of these considerations to make in buying a forequarter or in buying a hindquarter. Then if you're limited on freezer space, you may wish to consider buying by wholesale cut. And by wholesale cut, for example, here's a beef short loin where you get your porterhouse, T-bone, and club steaks. Or another wholesale cut would be a pork loin. You can have pork chops or pork loin roast cut just as you wish. Or how about a leg of lamb or a couple of legs of lamb? Have the sirloin chops cut off the leg and use the remaining portion of the leg for a leg of lamb roast. So you can buy in carcass form, you can buy by wholesale cut, and then there's another alternative to consider, and that's buying retail cuts. Very often the supermarkets will have specials on various retail cuts, and you can buy according to family preference. You can buy different steaks when they're on special at the supermarket, or there are always delicious roasts that are on special from time to time that you can buy for your family, like this beautiful beef rib roast. And there are certain guidelines on your meat cuts to help you in buying. For example, your round inspection stamp, which assures you of a wholesome meat product, then the USDA quality grade stamp that tells you you're buying a certain degree of quality. Then there's a yield grade stamp that tells you the percentage of usable lean meat in a carcass. So it's very important to know about the stamps on the meat cuts to help you as guidelines in buying. In fact, there's so much to know in buying for a freezer. There's so many factors to consider. And the U.S. Department of Agriculture has published a booklet entitled How to Buy Meat for Your Freezer. It's a very helpful and informative booklet. It covers beef, pork, and lamb, has identification charts of all three, and even has a chart to show you how to figure the retail value and compare the cost with retail prices. And you can write for a single free copy of the booklet by requesting it from Agriculture TV, Washington, D.C., zip code 20250. As I say, it's a very informative booklet, and I hope you'll send for it. Buying meat is an important job for any homemaker. You know, we spend about 25 cents out of every food dollar for meat, so it's very important from that standpoint. Also, meat is a food that we all like, especially when it's tender and juicy and flavorful. And whenever you're buying meat to prepare a beautiful entree such as this, it's important that you know about two things in particular, about the meat quality, and then it's important that you know about the cut of meat that you buy. Now, to talk first about quality, there are the USDA grades for meat to help you in buying. This roast is graded USDA choice, and you can see the little purple shield-shaped grade stamp on the outside fat covering. This tells you that you're buying a certain degree of quality. Also, it assures you of buying consistent quality, because this rib roast is going to be just as tender and juicy and flavorful if you buy it today or if you buy it 2 weeks from now when you buy by quality grade. So the grade stamps, or the grades, are there to help you in selecting. Now, these are the top 3 grades that you'll find most often in today's supermarket. The top quality grade, USDA Prime, and then this one, which is the most popular and one which you're most familiar with, USDA Choice. You'll find this all over the country in today's meat counter. And the third quality grade, USDA Good. And very often, a store will offer 2 grades. If you were going to buy a beef roast to prepare as a pot roast, you went in the store and there was USDA Choice and USDA Good available. And this one being a USDA Choice blade chuck roast, and this roast being a USDA Good blade chuck roast. And this one's selling for a few cents less per pound than this. Now, if you're going to prepare it as a pot roast, why not buy the USDA Good for a few cents per pound less? Because the way you cook it, cooking it slowly and adding liquid, you're going to tenderize it the way you cook it. So it's to your advantage to choose the grade according to how you're going to cook the particular cut that you select. So the grades do help in buying, you see. Now, meat grading is strictly voluntary. It's a service that's provided by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and it's provided by the request of meat packers and others who pay a fee for the service. And a specially trained federal meat grader judges the quality of the meat and then rolls the purple shield-shaped grade stamp all along the back side of a carcass and across the shoulder and up the brisket, and he rolls the grade stamp this way so that it appears on the outside fat covering of your retail cuts. Now, this roast, you can see the purple shield-shaped grade stamp on the outside fat covering of the roast, and this is what tells you the quality of meat that you're buying. So I say it represents a certain degree of quality and also assures you of consistent quality. Now, not all meat is graded. Only beef and calf and veal and lamb are graded for quality. Pork is not graded. Now, in addition, it's important to know the various cuts of meat that you buy and how to properly prepare them, because the cuts will vary within the animal. For example, in a side of beef, you have the more tender cuts along the center back portion of the side of beef, and then in this front section, the chuck, you have your shoulder and blade cuts, which are less tender, and then in the back section, in the round, you have your round steak and sirloin tip roast, also less tender. So you have to prepare according to cut, and as I say, the cuts will vary in tenderness within one animal or within a side of beef. Now, there are booklets to help you that have been published by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, one entitled How to Buy Beef Roast, the other How to Buy Beef Steaks. And in each of these booklets, there's an identification chart in the center fold, illustrates all of the popular retail cuts just as you see them in the meat counter. And you can write for your single free copy of each, write to Steaks and Roasts, Agriculture TV, Washington, D.C., zip code 20250. And you'll find, with the help of these booklets, that you'll be a much wiser shopper at the meat counter, and you can serve your meat cuts with pride. A beautiful, delectable beef rib roast. This is certainly suitable for special family dinners or special dinner guests, and this particular roast has a quality grade of USDA choice. So it has a high degree of quality, and it's a very tender cut of beef, and it can be prepared by oven roasting, the dry heat method of cookery. You simply place the roast in a shallow roasting pan like this, set it on the rib bones. You see these rib bones form a natural rack on the underside, and then insert your meat thermometer in the very center of the lean, because it's this meat thermometer that assures you of getting the desired degree of doneness. And now it's ready to go in the oven. And we'll put the roast in the oven at a temperature of 325 degrees. And whether you're cooking a beef rib roast like this one, or any roast, a pork roast, a leg of lamb roast, a beef chuck roast, if you'll cook your meat at a lower oven temperature, you'll get much better results in cooking. Also, if you use a meat thermometer for all of your roasts, then you'll always be assured of getting the desired degree of doneness. Now, I mentioned that that rib roast was USDA choice. Well, the very top quality grade is this one, USDA prime. And the little shield-shaped grade stamp on the outside fat covering tells you that it's USDA prime. The letters USDA and the grade name. And you see, with prime, there's an abundant amount of marbling in the lean meat. And this is the very best in beef quality. Then the next quality grade is this one, USDA choice. Also a high quality grade, I might add, and this is what you find most often in the supermarket. But each one of these grades represent a distinct level of quality. Now another roast that's certainly good for family meals, another delectable beef roast, is a blade chuck. And this blade chuck roast is also USDA choice, and in the top 3 grades, this can be oven roasted or prepared by the dry heat method of cookery, like your rib roast. So this roast we would place on a rack in a shallow roasting pan, and then insert the meat thermometer in the very center of the lean portion of the roast. Put it in the oven at 325 degrees, same temperature as the rib roast. Now for more economical meals, perhaps you'd like to serve your family a fresh beef brisket, such as this one, also graded USDA choice, or perhaps a shoulder arm roast. Both of these cuts have a high percentage of lean meat, small amount of bone, small amount of outside fat, but being a less tender cut, the shoulder arm, for example, should be prepared by the moist heat method of cookery. You put it in a roasting pan on a rack, and then add liquid. And the liquid that you add, you can use water, you can use various vegetable juices or fruit juices, and after you add the liquid, you simply put a cover on the roasting pan, put it in your oven at 300 to 325 degrees. And this is pot roasting a less tender cut of beef. Now another beef roast that's certainly good for family meals is this beautiful sirloin tip roast. It has a lot of good lean meat. It's also graded USDA choice. This is sometimes called a loin end roast or a round end roast, but this is another one that's certainly good for family meals. I've only mentioned a few of the many popular beef roasts here today, but you may want to study more of them in this booklet that's been put out by the U.S. Department of Agriculture entitled How to Buy Beef Roasts. The booklet has an identification chart in the center fold. It also has illustrations of all the popular retail cuts, just as you see them in the meat counter. Now you can write for a single free copy of the booklet by requesting it from Agriculture TV, Washington, D.C., zip code 20250.